Hello everybody, welcome to today's webinar session on advanced options within SoGoSurvey. Today we'll be exploring advanced features and functionalities that hopefully you'll be able to incorporate into your surveys in order to not only help improve the flow and feel of your survey, but also the quality of your data. So I want to go ahead and provide a brief introduction as your host for this webinar session before we fully dive into the content. My name is Rob DeLeon, as pictured here. I am a technical support engineer with the SoGoSurvey team located here in Herndon, Virginia. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with the area, basically we are located roughly about 25 miles to the west of Washington, D.C. So with intros out of the way, let's go ahead and we will begin. But first, let's kind of take a step back and look at the overall big picture of about every survey project. So we know that the overall end goal for most people is to try to attain a large pool of high quality data and feedback. But how do we get to that level of data? So if we start at the endpoint of data and work backwards, we know that we need to get this data from our participants, of course. So in order to get large amounts of quality data out of these participants, we want to go ahead and increase their engagement in the survey participation itself. So how do we do that? So let's go ahead and take another step backward, which will then point us to the technology in this, which in this case being our survey platform tool, which we can go ahead and try to utilize to the fullest with these advanced features. And by utilizing these advanced features, hopefully this should allow us to increase their engagement. So we want to go ahead and take a little bit of extra time and investment now on the front end in utilizing these options to go ahead and hopefully make the survey easier and more relevant to participants. And in that way, we can grow the amount of engagement amongst participants, which then helps grow the pool and quality of data available. And of course, talking about those advanced features itself, that is going to be the focus for today's session here. So here is the 5 features that we will be talking about today, along with all of their icons you can see here that kind of helps denote and show and identify them within our platform. So between all 3 of these, we're going to be going over 3 things, 3 points of discussion, being how it works, how it helps, and kind of a couple of other key items and thoughts to keep in mind when utilizing these. So the first feature we're going to be talking about is piping. So piping, how it works essentially is that it takes answers that participants enter from previous pages or an earlier page, and it will take that information and then essentially fill it into questions or answers on a later page. So I actually have 2 examples that we will take a look at in coming up here once we switch over to the platform. And so how it helps is that since it's providing them with relevant data based upon how they answered choices from previous pages, it helps raise engagement and it helps them focus on relevant data. So things to keep in mind is that since, as mentioned, it's taking from a previous page and entering it onto a later page, the source and destination questions, they have to be on separate pages. So you can't use piping within the exact same page. And also, since you're essentially pre-filling information on a later page with information from a previous page, you want to go ahead and make sure that that previous question is going to be answered, of course. So doing things like making the questions mandatory is going to be very strongly recommended. Or actually, we'll see in our example, I'm actually going to do a little bit of an advanced combination between piping and our next feature that we'll be talking about, data population, where essentially I'm going to actually pre-fill the source question for the participant with their information. And also another thing is that, so since you're thinking about it, since we're going to be taking that information from one question and filling it into another question again, if you have any kind of errors in terms of language, punctuation, or spacing, that information or those errors are essentially going to get reflected twice. So definitely double check that information before you decide to use piping. So with that, let's go ahead and hop into the platform here. Of course, we'll be showcasing each of these features here one by one. So I've got a 4-page survey, so nothing really too fancy here in terms of the content, just for demonstration purposes to showcase the features. But so as mentioned, we've got our icons here that kind of show once they are applied onto questions that pop up here on the left side panel. So we're going to scroll down and we will look for that piping icon, which is actually between both these questions. So as mentioned, I have both examples here. So in this case up here, I have a response to question 2, which is primary work location, being pre-filled here into the question up here. And then down here, so I have, these are answer choices actually from question 7 right here that is being pre-filled into here. So let's go ahead and I can show you this one at least for right now. So if I go ahead, I'm going to go to preview. And then I am just going to skip straight forward to page 3, where the piping is. So this is where one of the piping results should be, which asks about your company location. So there's currently nothing here in the preview because essentially what has happened is that we've skipped completely over it in question 1. So it's basically drawing a blank, but I can show you that in the next feature. But let me go ahead for now. So I'm going to select my company location and facilities that I've been to or I work at. So let's say I work at Dragon Fruit Drive. I've been to Blueberry Bend and also Apple Hill. So if I click next, and I'll go ahead and throw a rating. So you can see when I move into this next one, it's actually showing me only the 3 that I just selected now. So Apple Hill, Blueberry Bend, Dragon Fruit Drive. So now I can go ahead and just rank these. And then just go ahead and submit it. But of course, this is just a preview, so not an actual response here. But to show you kind of how this works, and so for this particular one, so if I go ahead and click Edit, to pipe into the question itself, which is right here, effectively all I have to do is that you can see that there is a little piping button right here in this list of buttons right here. So if I actually click on this, it'll turn from blue into pretty much a gray or black, the rest of the color of the toolbar. So now I can actually take this and I can pipe this anywhere within the question. So I basically just need to click where I want to pipe. So if I want to pipe right here, I can do that. And then this is now where you can actually choose your source question. So what question do you want to pipe from? So if I wanted to say, which department do you manage? I can throw it like there. And then it adds that little code. So that is how you do piping into the question itself. In terms of how you do it into the answers, so let me go ahead and delete that. Cancel. And we'll move down to the next question. So I hit edit right here. So this is a ranking question type. And so I already have them piped here, but effectively what happens is that there's a button right here. So it says edit right now, but of course this is going to be an add instead if you don't have this already applied. But similar to what we just saw in the last one, effectively I go here, click this button, it'll ask you your source question just like previously. So in this case, question 7, but we do have an extra option here because these are answers. So I can choose to do all the answers from question 7. In this case, remember, I did only the selected answers. It only showed me the 3 that I selected. You can do unselected answers, displayed answers, or not displayed answers. So you got a couple different options here. So, and once you do that, then you will be all set to go with piping. Okay, so let us scroll up. And we will be talking about the ones, as I mentioned here, so I can showcase the other piping in action. So this next one is noted right here, data population. So let's go back to the slides. Data prepopulation. So this is a very powerful tool. So how this works essentially is that you have information that you already know about your participants. So you can collect this information and you can import it into a contact list in our system. So using something like an Excel file, and then you can use that to actually pre-fill known answers. So how it helps is that since you're controlling the data, of course, it helps improve the quality of your data, since you don't have to worry about any kind of error from your participants. And it also helps save them time since you're pre-filling that information for them. So a couple things to keep in mind is that you want to go ahead and make sure that your answers actually match exactly what is in your contact list, because if there's any kind of mismatches there, so if you have a radio button where a single select, it doesn't find that exact match, then it's not going to be able to pre-fill that information because there's going to be basically mismatches in the data. Also note that you do have different forms of pre-population available. So you have hidden, where you can have the question completely not shown to your participants, read-only, where it'll show to them, but they can't edit it, and editable, which, as by name states, they can see the question and they can also edit that pre-filled information. So let's go into here. So on the design side, it's actually very simple what you have to do. So really all you have to do is, when you're actually designing the question, so if I was in edit state, you take a look at the left side panel here, we have a drop down here for data population. And then you've got all of your options right here. So we're going to be focusing just on the pre-filled options right now. So we've got the pre-read only, and then so we're using pre-hidden here. So if I were to go ahead and preview this from the very first page, you'll see that I'm not going to be able to see question 2, which is primary work location, because of course we have it set to pre-hidden. And right now this is set as pre-editable, and by default it's actually pre-filled with today's date. So we can go ahead and let me show you an actual live example now, and also how this works with the contact list itself. So as mentioned, you can go ahead and set something up like this, where you've just got an Excel file. So you can see I've just got one email address, I've got the information on hire date, primary work location right there. So say I work at Dragon Fruit Drive. So I can take this list and then I can go into our platform. So if I go now into distribute, which is where the majority of this feature implementation actually happens, I can set up a contact list over here at the top right. So essentially you want to go new list, and then you can upload the file and information. And then so, which I've already done here. So I'm just going to showcase this advanced options webinar. So I've got my email address right here. So I just want to make sure that everything matches up. So I've got all my information that I need right here. So now once you get this contact list set up in our system, all you need to do is you need to go ahead and send it via email now. So publish. We're going to go into single use link. You can go ahead and select any email template. And now the source. So the source you're going to want to make sure you select from a list, being the contact list that we just created. Select the name of it. And then make sure that this pre-populate survey button is checked if it isn't, or if you uncheck it. So go ahead and hit continue. And now this page right here shows you pretty much the mapping. So this is the page where you're essentially going to be mapping the fields from your contact list, as shown here on the right, along with to your survey questions here on the left side. So by default, since I set up the contact list already in order with the questions, it's already lined up. But just in case it's not, just make sure that essentially each of your survey questions and your list fields line up with each other. So hire date, work location, and we are good, and we'll hit continue. So last little section right here is going to be when to send the course. So on this page, you also have a preview pre-pop button that appears right here now, since we have that as an option. Definitely good to do, just to make sure that everything looks good again. Everything is lined up exactly how you planned to map it. And then just go ahead and hit send. And so now this is sending one of my emails, an invitation, and we can take a look here. There we go. So if I'm going to click on this invite, now you'll see, so I've got that information, so it's pre-filled now, 1/1/2018. I have my Dragon Fruit Drive information in there. It's my work location, but it's currently not showing. I'm select no here, so I can get to this page, which then shows right there. So remember that piping that I mentioned that we couldn't see because there's a hidden question. So there's the information pipe right there. Now I can once again select Dragon Fruit Drive, and let's say Clementine Court. And I'll rank this one higher. I'll say I'm interested, and we'll talk about this feature that just popped up right there in a moment. I'm going to select Friday here. Okay, but that is data prepopulation. So with that, let's go back, and we will begin talking about our next feature, which is known as Quota Management. So what Quota Management is that how it works is essentially it's a feature that allows you to place limits upon answer choices in terms of how many times people can select that answer choice. And once a certain limit is reached, either you can basically hide it or you can gray it out as an unavailable option. And so how this helps is we'll see here in our example is that effectively if you have something where you're trying to do some kind of project management or something like a sign-up tool, so in this case, this is signing up for different focus groups with different time slots. You can actually have real-life feedback where it will basically, if you know you have a cap on how many seats there are available, you can make it so only that number of people can sign up for that session. And also, of course, that helps avoid any kind of frustration on participants' ends if they sign up for a session. And then let's say, after the fact, they end up finding out that, oh, that session is actually full. So will help on that. And also things to keep in mind is that it's only available on certain question types as noted right here. Drop down radio button, horizontal radio button, check down, and list box. So as mentioned, that feature was applied to our very last question that we had just seen. Let's scroll back down, which is right here. It's got our little quota management icon right there. So how you access this is that once you set up a question, so like this where it's preferred time slots, all I need to do is go to these three dots right here, set answer quota. And from here, you can see that we've got your different actions that you can do here. So you can do, as mentioned, either grayed out or remove from list, or of course you can have answer choices that don't have anything applied to it. And also, with the ones that are grayed out, since they will still be visible, you can also display specific messages for them. So things like this. So we can actually see this in a moment here, because actually on that one response I just submitted, I selected Friday. And so let's say Friday only has one seat. So that one should theoretically show as grayed out now. So let's go ahead and test it. So let me go and grab another live invitation. I'm just going to grab a quick shareable URL from right here. So if I copy this, I'm just going to go into another and paste. So once again, just going to skip over a bunch of things here. Blueberry Bend is rank 1. So I need to select yes in this case for this question to show up. So you can see it right there. So it's grayed out. So if I hover over it, it tells me right there. Oh, no more pizza. I'm going to go Monday. Actually, I'm just going to close out of this one. But that is quota management. And what you also just saw with how I had to select yes for that to show up, that's going to be our last two features of discussion here, which involves our logic options. So logic being pretty much being able to guide people down specific paths or show them specific questions based upon how they will answer a question. So we'll be talking about two different forms of logic here. So this first one we're going to touch upon is known as branching. So how this one works, as mentioned, it is going to guide you through a different path in the survey depending on how they answered a decision question. And so how it helps is that it helps shorten our surveys. Of course, since now they don't have to answer a whole bunch of questions that are irrelevant to them. So no more of not applicable, does not apply, this is not me. We want to make sure that people don't have to answer that as much as possible. And with that, it helps improve the data quality and also the participants' engagement with the survey. So things to keep in mind is that branching is designed as a page-to-page flow option. So you'll actually see what I mean by that in just a moment. Since there is, of course, a decision question, it is strongly recommended to set that to mandatory, just so we guide them down the right path that is relevant to them. And also you want to go ahead and choose on how many decision questions you have, because we do have options for either setting conditions based upon single question or multiple questions. So in which case you'd use either single question or multi-question branching, as the name implies. So let's go back here to the survey. So branching, in this case, we actually only have simple branching that we'll be showcasing today. So it is actually applied into here. So single question branching. So effectively what is going to be happening is that if they say yes, they'll be routed to a page, which is page 2 right here, that is specifically only questions that managers would need to answer. Otherwise, if they select no, it'll route them straight to page 3. So where I can set that up is that I can either go up here. So I've got question display logic, single question branching, and multi-question branching is only available up at this window right here. But I can also do it here as well. So as you can see, I've got question display logic and single question branching. Single question branching, so if I click on that, so I actually can't make any changes right now because I already have a response that I put in here. So this is going to be a limitation when you have a live survey. But actually, let's go ahead and also for the question display logic's sake, we will go ahead and give me a moment to go and delete that one response that I had entered in. Track survey. So we can kind of show how to freely edit these. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, hit delete. And we'll go back to design. So now if we go here to logic, single question branching. So as you can see, it's pretty simple and straightforward here. So I can click on edit. So now I can choose here. So yes, next page. No, if it's not answered, page 3. Or I could also do something. Well, so this is grayed out because this is a mandatory question as mentioned, but you can set logic based upon if they don't answer it as well. But as mentioned, so next page, page 3. So let's go ahead and we'll showcase that. So if I'm a manager, so we can see our page numbers here at the top right. So if I'm a manager, yes, it comes up with this, which we'll talk about in just a moment, which is our other form of logic. So it takes me to page 2. But if not, it doesn't show me that answer question. And it takes me straight to page 3. So you've been seeing that other form of logic now here. So let's go ahead and we'll talk about that last one here. Question display logic. So another form of logic. And so this one, as you can see, as you have seen actually, this results in a participant's answer to a certain question, leading to a follow-up question being shown. So if they answer this question, then it will show this question. If not, then it will keep it hidden. So once again, just like with branching, it helps shorten surveys. helps improve the quality of your data and your engagement. So things to keep in mind is that the question-to-question flow, it can be used on later pages, although personally, this seems to me it's more of a within the same page kind of logic. So you also want to, just like branching, you want to make sure that the decision questions are mandatory. And also, it's usually recommended to set these rules last as well. So with that, let's go ahead and show you this one. So here was where we had the question display logic. So we actually have in two places within the survey here. So show hide question right there. And then also we have it at the very end of our survey as well too. So with this one, question 10 and then question 11. So you got your show hide question. And so effectively what these are, so let me show from this one. If I go to logic, question display logic. So here is the rules that you can set up here. So for this one is actually under question display logic rule 2. So you can have multiple per survey, as you can see. If I hit edit, this is kind of how they set up. You choose your show hide question, which in this case is question 11, and then the decision question, which is question 10. So the way question display logic works is that once you apply question display logic to a question, it hides it by default. And so if this condition is met, then it will show this question. So that's the way to think about it. So we've got this now. It's question 10, and if it's one of the following, yes, then it'll show that one. So same thing with the first rule too. So whether you're a manager or not, so if they select yes, then it'll show the follow-up question, which is being question 4. So if I go into the preview again, so just like right here. So by default, it's hidden. If I select no, nothing comes up. If I select yes, it gives me this follow-up question. Same thing on page 4. So there's nothing there. If I select no, no follow-up, yes, it provides me the follow-up question. Okay. So that is all of our advanced options that we have for today's session. Hopefully it was relatively clear for everybody, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. And if not, which it seems like, definitely feel free to connect with us in the future in case you have any other questions or would like any extra assistance or explanation on any of these features or any other features functionality you have within our platform. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.